welcome into this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast on a Victory Monday. As always, myself, Eli, joined by Isaac and Joe. Fellas, a 36-10 victory over the Carolina Panthers. Isaac, give me your thoughts on a huge win for the Chicago Bears against the Carolina Panthers at home.
Such a good win, first of all. And something that I want to talk about is the Bears don't really have a good history of playing well against worse opponents. And a lot of people I've been noticing online on social media, they've been saying, well, it's just the Panthers, but to me, it doesn't matter who we're playing up against because we don't determine who we play against. And to play good against a team, regardless of how good they are, it's a good feeling for me. I think there was a lot of positives to take away from the game, and we'll get into that later. But just the overall performance from the offensive side was a very nice sight to see. Finally, after weeks of us talking, in a negative aspect about the offense, it's finally coming together. Caleb Williams threw another 300-yard passing game today or on Sunday, and there was a lot of bright spots. Unfortunately, Tevin Jenkins went down with the ankle injury during the game, but his replacement, Bill Murray, played excellent, and that could be another topic of discussion that we could get into later. And then on the defensive side, just continuing to be dominant. Brisker looks amazing. Byard had his first pick, and just amazing performance. And I'll toss it over to Joe. What were your thoughts on the Bears' 36-10 victory against the Carolina Panthers?
I mean, yeah, like you said, they finally did what they were supposed to do. Like they did what they're supposed to do. They needed to win this game big against a bad Panthers team. It only kept getting worse during the game. They kept on letting, they kept on getting more hurt during the game. They lost Tommy Tremble during the game to a concussion from that Brisker hit. They lost um Jadeveon Clowney during the game to a shoulder injury. They lost an offensive lineman during the game I think they lost two offensive linemen during the game to injuries. So like they kept getting more hurt. So they beat up on a bad team, which they needed to do because they haven't done that uh in the Matt Eberflus era. They beat bad teams, but they don't beat up on them. They finally beat up on a bad team. So they needed to do that. The offense looked really good. Uh the defense looked good. I mean, the run defense still has issues. I mean, we saw that again. Uh, there was one big play. If you take that one big play away, they would have allowed 4 yards of carry, which still isn't great, but it's better than what they had been. But they let up a 38-yard touchdown run, so that wasn't great. But everything else on the defense was good. They were playing with speed, obviously to the ball like always. He had two, was it two interceptions and a fumble, or was it the other way? Or it was they had
I
three
want to
turnovers.
say it was two fumbles and a pick. I want to say 'cause I don't think Dalton threw two, but I'm not
Yeah.
100% on that.
I'm trying to remember.
Let me.
Brisker got a fumble. Uh, I know we got one pick at least. I
By
think you're right.
Byard
Yeah,
got one. I think Byard was the only one that got a pick.
Sorry. Yeah, Byard got the pick. I don't know what I said, but Byard got an interception. Yeah, but yeah, the defense played really well. Uh, they actually held Andy Dalton. I I'm gonna check this so I'm not wrong. I'm pretty sure they held him to under 200 yards passing. Um, which that's really, I mean, I know the Panthers don't have a great offense, but he's been letting up the passing yards when he's been in. Um, Give me a second. He had 136 yards passing. Um, so yeah, they kept him to under 200 yards passing, which uh great, especially after. I mean, I know Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback than him, but Matthew Stafford passed 200 yards last week. So the fact that they were able to keep Dalton under 200, and then also Bryce Young came in at the end of the game, but he didn't throw for more than 70. So the Bears' overall defense held them to under 200 passing yards, which uh very good outing. Yeah, I think that's my general thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm with you. The defense has looked better, but I really want to talk about this Bears offense because this has been the topic of conversation through 5 weeks. Is that there hasn't been much consistency along the offensive line. The run game hadn't been going up until last week into this week, and the passing attack hadn't been as good as it can be. What we kind of saw yesterday, we're finally seeing some offensive consistency when it comes to just a balanced offense overall. DeAndre Swift has been electric the last 2 weeks that we hadn't seen through the first 3 weeks of the season. 120 plus total yards in the last 2 weeks. Through 5 weeks, if I did the math correctly, he's averaged 3.1 yards per carry, which is obviously skewed from the early games where we couldn't get the run game going. But in the last 2 weeks, he's averaged 4.4 yards per carry, and he's also been just a massive weapon in the receiving game, like we kind of expected him to be. Uh, Roshan has been the goal line back, like we all kind of wanted him to be, and Herbert has kind of been the odd man out. And I want to bring that up later for a different topic of discussion. But um, some more math. I'm not very good at math, so bear with me. But some more math I did looking at this Bears game yesterday. 424 yards of total offense. I can't remember the last time that the Bears had over 400 yards of offense in any game. 6.1 yards per play. We were 3 for 4 in the red zone, and obviously no turnovers for the game. And going through some more math once again, Caleb, as of right now, and again, this is skewed from these early games where this could be even a better stat line at the end of the year, is on pace for over 3,700 yards passing, which would be among some of the Bears' best quarterback play ever. Touchdown to interception ratio 17-13, which again is skewed because we've seen in the last few weeks that Caleb has just been better at decision making and not putting the ball into turnover worthy plays. And his sack percentage this week was only 3.33%. But he's still on pace to be sacked 58 times this year, which is not a great number, but still we're seeing some more consistency from the offense. And again, it's only 5 weeks into the season, so a lot of this info is skewed. But offensively, Isaac, I'll start with you. Just over the course of the year, and maybe specifically to this Panthers game, what did you see that gives you hope moving forward, whether that's the offensive line, a certain player that might be giving you hope, or Shane Waldron's offense in general?
Yeah, so I do want to highlight Shane Waldron because I like that the Bears went up tempo majority of the game. I think that's what Caleb plays really well in, and I think it suits him really well. And it's nice to see offensive cohesiveness. And the thing is, for the Bears, I feel like the past couple seasons it's been very stagnant on offense. I feel like it's been like a first and second down run, third down pass play that hasn't really worked. And it's nice to see that Waldron is finally getting to know how to use his players better. And then in terms of Caleb Williams, I mean, this guy has been playing way better. And like I have some statistics here as well. So over the past 2 weeks, when Caleb Williams was blitzed, he was 17 for 19 for 200 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 turnover-worthy plays. So to see that we have a quarterback that is so good against the blitz already in his rookie year is crazy. Another thing I want to highlight is the first 10 quarters of Caleb Williams' season, he had a 57 percent completion percentage, only 5.2 yards per attempt. He had 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 57.6. Compared to the last 10 quarters of play, his completion percentage went up to 70%. He had over 7.9 yards per attempt. He had 5 touchdowns to only 1 interception and 109.8 passer rating. So just to see the improvement with Caleb, it's a nice sight. And then finally, I don't know if you guys, I mean, you guys have seen it, but I don't know if the listeners have, but a lot of people were commenting on the route tree that DJ Moore had last week, and they were getting really frustrated and upset. And thankfully, it looks a lot better this week. And this isn't, I just want to highlight something that 1 week isn't determining the overall usage of DJ Moore and Waldron's play calling. Like that's not something that we should be overly hard on. But to see that, each week there's subtle improvements in different aspects of the offense. It's really nice to see. And another thing that probably went overlooked that a lot of people probably didn't notice was Cole Kmet. He didn't get a bunch of targets last game, but like so far this season, he has 21 receptions, which is fifth in the league, and he also has 219 yards, fifth in the league. He has 12 first down attempts, which is third, and then 0 drops. So it's just nice to see that there's overall improvement in different aspects of the offense. And I'll toss it over to you, Joe. What were some things that you noticed on Sunday against the Panthers in terms of the offense and any key players that stood out to you?
I want to take this first because Eli mentioned we got 400 yards on offense. The last time the Bears did that was Week 17 last year against the Falcons, but that was their only 400-yard game of the year. So hopefully we get more than that one this year, which I think we will. Because the offense looked really good. Again, it was against a bad Panthers team, but it gives everybody hope that they will do it again. But other than that, I think the what I would like to point out on the offense is we finally got some explosive plays. For the first 4 weeks, we had 12 explosive plays. When the chart that I looked at, explosive plays were 10 plus yard runs and 20 plus yard receptions. This week we had 4 20 plus yard catches. Um, with some of those 20 plus yard catches came with catch and run, but I think those still technically count because they're catches that were over 20 yards. I don't know if I don't think it has to be air yards, but it might have to be 20 plus air yards. If I'm wrong on that, sorry, but I'm counting them as all the receptions that past 20 yards or 20 yards as explosive plays. And then they had one explosive run. Um, so I'm happy we got more explosive plays because while you like to see offenses sustain drives, the big plays do help you get down the field faster and score. So seeing that was nice. Uh, we talked about earlier. We talked about in our preview that we were curious to see if TJ Moore would finally have his breakout game this year. He did. He got 4 receptions for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of his touchdowns were really nice catches. Uh, he did drop a pass, which you don't usually see when he was wide open, but that's fine. I do think that not everything, but Caleb did miss a couple throws, like not like miss, but like they were open receivers and he didn't chose not to throw it. Like on that 3rd and 14 scramble in the third quarter, where he got tackled, where he only gained 11 yards. Rome Dunze was open, but he didn't throw it to Rome. He instead just ran it. Um, and then there was another play where he missed open guy, I think. I don't remember the exact play right now. And then Caleb, this play isn't all on Caleb. It was on the wind too, and a bunch of other factors. But that 26-yard catch that Cole Kmet had, it should have been a touchdown. Like if Caleb threw it to a better spot and the wind didn't mess up the ball, it might have been a touch. It probably would have been a touchdown. But they still ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. I'm like 99% sure, so it's fine. It just that was that they did because that was the 2 minute drill in the second quarter. So they still scored a touchdown on that drive, but it would have been nice to see an explosive touchdown. Um, but yeah, you also the running game it wasn't great. Like it was fine, but it wasn't like it didn't look like it did last week. Like you said, not like you said, but Eli said that over the past 2 weeks they've averaged 4.4 yards of carry on the ground. But Swift this week only at 3.5 yards of carry, which it's okay, but you'd still like to see that be a little bit higher. He had 21 rushes for 73 yards, so not great. Um, but he did have some explosive plays in receive. Well, he had one explosive reception for 2 yard screen pass, which was a really nice play. But yeah, overall the offense looked great. Uh, this hopefully will be a building block game. Gerald Everett even got involved and made a good play, which is surprising because they tried to get Waldron tried to get him involved a lot in the first 2 weeks. He just did not do anything. But Caleb Williams found him on a 3rd and 11 in the third quarter, and Everett was able to break a tackle and get the first down. So that was nice to see. Uh, and then I'll Keenan's the last guy, touchdown. He had a couple catches. He also had a very important pass breakup in the first play of the game that the ball sailed on Caleb. I'm pretty sure Caleb said in his post-game press conference that the ball sailed on him because of the wind. So he Keenan got his hand in there to break up a pick six from JC Horn. He didn't get the hand, and then JC Horn was gone. So uh overall, Caleb played good. Everyone, the offense looked good. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the main takeaway from this game is that the Bears finally, like we kind of all mentioned, have finally gone against an inferior opponent, and it looked like the opponent they were facing was inferior. The Bears took advantage of every single opportunity to score and never look back and not take their foot off the gas. So they did somewhat in that second half, but they never made it seem like it was going to be a game again. They just put their foot on the gas and never looked back. Um, and there are still some things that need to be cleaned up because this could have been even more of a blowout. I think we could all agree, as Joe kind of mentioned on several plays that could have been touchdowns, I guess is the way to put it. But still, as you kind of mentioned, a building block game that will hopefully benefit us going forward in a pretty favorable part of our 17 game schedule. So I want to kind of talk about, and Isaac, you kind of mentioned it, so I'll toss it to you after. But we did see some injuries on the offensive line, and we have in the last few weeks, Bill Murray replacing Tevin Jenkins. So I'll toss it to you. What are your kind of thoughts on this offensive line mixture this week? And do you think that it could potentially be a starting unit moving forward, or do you think this is just kind of a plug and play moment?
Yeah, so I was really impressed with Bill Murray. I actually just posted an article about him. And unfortunately, I think that Tevin, with his rib injury and then the ankle injury during the game, I just don't know if Ryan Poles is confident on re-signing him. And they'll probably have conversations in the offseason. Like, I know Poles is gonna probably mention something to Jenkins, like, we really like you. We want you to be part of this team. We just don't know we're gonna be able to offer you the amount of money that you might want. We might have to give you a team-friendly deal, and he'll probably, because Poles is a very blunt person. I'm pretty sure he'll be like, you know what, like you and I both know that you haven't been the healthiest person, um, and stuff like that. But for Bill Murray, just to know that we have like good defense or offensive line depth is nice. And I think Murray, if Tevin can't go this week against Jacksonville, I'm pretty sure Murray would do another fantastic job again. Um, and then as for the overall offensive line, I still believe that when Ryan Bates is healthy, we should plug him in at center instead of Coleman Shelton, and we'll see what happens. I didn't really see too much negative stuff from Shelton against the Panthers. I don't know if you guys noticed anything. You guys could let me know, but I still think that Bates would be a better option for us at center. And then Matt Pryor has been doing fine. I think he's gonna just continue to be the right guard for the end of the season. I do think that the Bears are going to focus on upgrading at right guard during the offseason. I think one of two things is gonna happen. One, they're gonna cut Nate Davis because I don't think they want to pay a backup offensive lineman, that much money. And two, I don't think it's going to be a free agent move. I do think it's going to be go through the draft and draft the right guard. And there's a lot of good prospects that will be mentioned later in the season when stuff like that. But I think the offensive line is fine. I don't think, I mean, Bill Murray is probably going to be a plug and play until Tevin Jenkins comes back, but he did a fine job. Um, and as for the rest of the offensive line, I mean, the tackles are fine, and if one of them gets injured, we could always put on Amagenji, and we'll see how that works out. And yeah, that's just my overall thoughts on the Bears offensive line.
I will take it. I think that I want to start off with this. Bill Murray played great, but if Tevin is healthy, do not play him over Tevin. Just Tevin, even though he's not been great this year, he has shown that he can set the tone for a game. So you do not take him out for a player that looked good in a game for a spot start. But no, just keep Tevin when he's healthy. Keep Tevin in the lineup. Um, but other than that, the offensive line, I mean, they look good, but it shouldn't have looked bad because that Panthers offense or yeah, that Panthers defensive line doesn't have anybody on it. So there was no reason for them to look bad. They looked bad in the first drive, they allowed a sack, and then after that, they were there was a couple more plays that could have been sacks and uh pressures. There was a couple pressures. Other than that, like the offensive line did pretty well. I mean, the run blocking still. Oh, the run blocking's been better the past 2 weeks. I don't know if it's more the run blocking or Swift this week that mm, uh what didn't allow them to have big running plays, but either way, I think the run blocking is fine. Um, but yeah, I think overall, I keep the offensive line the same as it was going into this week when Tevin is healthy. I agree with you. I think they'll try to give uh that Poles is going to put Bates in at center or have Bates in at center. Although when he's healthy, but I don't know if that's like I know Shelton hasn't been good, but like shaking the center up midway through the season with a rookie quarterback, I don't know if that's a great idea. But if Bates is a better center than Shelton is, then okay. I'm a little afraid that that's gonna ruin uh whatever flow that Caleb has going. Even if Bates is the better center, it might take a couple weeks for them to get going together. It's like this game, Shelton called out that a fire blitz was coming. That's what that there's a fire coming. Line meant was there's a fire blitz coming from the cornerback, and Bates recognized or sorry, Shelton recognized that and told Caleb, and then Caleb ended up keeping the run, but it was a run pass option, and Caleb got the ball out quickly to DJ Moore. But I just think not that Ryan Bates can't do that, but like if it's his first couple games with Caleb in the season, regular season, I feel like the communication is going to not be great. So like while Shelton hasn't been playing great, I'm just scared that putting Bates in there will have the offensive line, at least for a couple games, look a lot worse with the communication between center and uh and quarterback. But moving to the defensive line, there was a couple we talked about going into the game how the Panthers had a really good offensive line, didn't allow a lot of pressures. Well, um against the Bears, they allowed 27 total pressures. Marcus Walker got 6, Javon Dexter got 6, uh Darrell Taylor got 5, Andrew Billings got 2, Byron Coward got 2, then Montez Sweat, uh Austin Booker, Kyler Gordon, uh Deontay, not Deontay, why can I not think of his name? Uh the the defensive end Hardy, what's his first name? I can't remember.
Daniel, I
Uh
believe. Daniel Hardy.
yeah, Daniel Hardy, yeah, that's it. Uh Chris Williams got 1, Josh Blackwell and Josh Blackwell all got 1 for sure. So that's 27 total. Um I Dexter got a couple sacks. So he keeps flashing, which is good. Uh we wanted to see that at the beginning of the season, and he's been doing that. He's been getting back to the quarterback. Uh but yeah, the fact that our defensive line was able to take uh every our defensive line was able to pressure Dalton uh af- against the best uh offensive line in terms of pressure rate this year was very impressive to me.
Yeah, the defensive line was a huge topic coming into this year. You know, we thought that was going to be one of the main weak points outside of Montez Sweat. We thought it was going to be pretty iffy here and there, and we were just hoping that Dexter would come along and be the prospect that we thought he could be. The slow get off was the topic of conversation throughout this offseason, and he has just exploded onto the scene and been that interior force alongside Billings that we really needed. Austin Booker has not looked bad through 5 weeks. Obviously, still a really raw prospect, and I think next year you'll really kind of see him develop into that pass rusher that can be alongside Montez Sweat. But he hasn't been bad for this through 5 weeks, and just it's this rotation. Usually you don't like the rotational pieces and you just want those 3 down guys. But Matt Eberflus has really shown that he can build a strong rotation on this defensive line, mixing in DeMarcus Walker, who had a great day yesterday, Darrell Taylor, and just everybody on the defensive front. So it's looked a lot better than expected, and it looked pretty good yesterday. Isaac, your thoughts on the defensive line?
Yeah. First of all, that Andrew Billings sack got me so hyped up because I love Billings. But besides that, I mean, just to see the breakout year that Jervon Dexter Sr. is having is a nice sight to see. And I'm really been impressed with the defensive line, like you guys have mentioned. I was basically I was more skeptical about the defensive line than the offensive line heading into the season, and then it flip-flopped really fast. But to see that it's not just one guy, like it's not just Sweat making these plays, it's Sweat, Billings, Dexter, Walker, Darrell Taylor has put on such a great performance this season. It's nice to see. And it's funny because we haven't really talked about the linebackers yet, when the linebackers were supposed to be like the main, the best area and on the defense for us. But that was my thoughts on the Bears defensive line. And then I want to toss it over to you, Joe. Did you have something you want to mention?
I wanted to add, you mentioned the rotation, Eli. Yeah, it's been fine, but like the way they're rotating, I don't know if I love, because they, instead of keeping some of the main players in and just rotating one or two at a time, they take out the whole offensive line and they take out their whole defensive line and put the backups in, which that's kind of what has led to like the big touchdown runs. So like, I just don't like, I just don't like that. Like, if the players get tired, sure, but you shouldn't force players to come off of the field. Especially, I know you want them to be fresh for later in the game, the third downs, but like, don't force them to come off the field, because then the big plays happen, which make the defense from like a spectator's eye that doesn't, like, just someone that doesn't like break down game stuff. It just makes them look a little bit worse because you don't realize that the backups are in. I'm gonna even say I can't tell that right away. I need to be told that, but like, I don't like that. Keep your starters in, uh, unless they want to come out. But yeah, that's what I wanted to add about the defensive rotation.
Yeah, I'll add really quick to what Joe was saying. I do agree, like we shouldn't be changing out the entire defensive line and then putting in all the backups. And I have been noticing that for some reason Montez Sweat hasn't been playing as much snaps as DeMarcus Walker each game. I've been seeing that trend going on. For me personally, I would have it like where Sweat and Javon Dexter Sr. are both 3 down players, first through third down or whatever Coach Eberflus wants to do it. And Andrew Billings, it'll kind of be like up to him, like, okay, I'm tired, coach, like take me out. And then for DeMarcus Walker, maybe have him switch out with Darrell Taylor here and there, or have Austin Booker come in, every once in a while. But yeah, I think that just changing out the whole first string defensive line and then putting in the second string defensive line is not the best idea. And hopefully, there's someone in the coaching room that notices this trend, and maybe they'll tell Eberflus like, hey, we should probably switch it so we don't have these big touchdown plays on our end. But Eli, do you want to have any comment on that?
No, you guys bring up great points. I want to say it was Chris Williams that was in yesterday on that Chuba Hubbard run. Yeah. But I do agree. I think it's the interior rotation right now. I just don't think there's a lot of depth on that interior defensive line, and I think Matt Eberflus, I think he thinks more highly of his interior guys than most people would. So I think, in theory, if he had the right personnel, if we had just one more defensive tackle that could mix in there and be a reliable run stopper, I think it would bode a lot more a lot better than it has been. But I think the rotation on the ends hasn't been bad. I do agree that Montez Sweat needs to be in more often. Isaac, you brought up a great point with DeMarcus Walker, but yeah, I do agree that the rotation on the interior, I think, has been pretty weak just because of the personnel. Joe, did you have something to add?
I'm gonna hop in one more time. So, you're saying the Sweat thing. Sweat is actually playing the same like percentage of snaps that he would play last year. It just doesn't seem like it for some reason. But he was around 65% of snaps last year that he played when he came to Chicago. That's about where he is this year. So for whatever reason, everyone's saying it that he doesn't feel like Sweat's playing enough, but it's really the same amount that he's been playing the whole time he's been here. But I do agree with the defensive tackle point. Maybe if Zach Pickens was healthy, it'd be different, but he hasn't been healthy all year, so who knows? But yeah, I'll pass it back over to you now, Eli.
Yeah, I definitely need to look at the percentages just because it's like interesting in general just to see what their thought process is behind just the different playing percentage. Because another point of emphasis with that was Gerald Everett in the first few weeks was playing an astronomical amount of time compared to Cole Kmet, and thankfully they got that figured out. So maybe that's the case along the defensive line, just in general with that entire unit. But uh, it would be interesting to kind of look and see who's playing more than who and how that matches up to the game film and everything like that. But that kind of transitions into what I wanted to talk about next. This defensive line unit, the interior especially, as we kind of just talked about, is pretty weak. And the NFL trade deadline is coming up. And there's several things that I kind of want to mention, and we can be quick or however long it takes. Is no big deal. But um, is there a certain position on this team that you think the Bears should look at addressing at the trade deadline? Is there anyone that we should sell? I know a big name uh, that I've kind of thought about with this trade deadline, not referring to the defensive line, is Khalil Herbert, because he just has not been getting these carries through 5 weeks. And Roshan has kind of established himself as the goal line back. I don't necessarily agree with the thought process of trading him, but uh, just in general, Isaac, I'll start with you. Is there any position on this team that you think the Bears should be looking at as buyers or sellers as we approach the trade deadline? I believe starts just after week 9.
Yeah, you nailed it. Definitely Khalil Herbert because as much as I like Khalil Herbert, if he's not going to be a factor on offense, there's no real reason to keep him. So I would ship him off. I mean, we would probably be able to get like a fifth or sixth round pick, maybe fifth at the highest, and six is probably like what we can get for him. And then as regards to trading for someone, like we've been talking about, defensive tackle is definitely a position I would keep an eye on. I don't think it's gonna be a blockbuster trade like last season where we traded for a perennial pass rusher. I think it's gonna be more like a trade for depth. So I would say probably defensive tackle would be an option or in an interior offensive lineman. Poles did do that last season with trading a sixth round pick for Dan Feeney, and I mean he's not on the team anymore, but that's something that we could keep an eye on. And then just to go back to what Joe was mentioning about Montez Sweat, I get that he was playing around the same percentage last season, but my initial thought was like because we just traded for him, he's not really familiar with our scheme or with the team, and so we're kind of like getting him comfortable in our system, but for this season, he's our best pass rusher by far, and I would want him to be in way more than around 65% of the snaps. So, I mean, I don't think it's gonna change. I think he's gonna continue to just play around that 65%, and it's fine. It's working right now, but uh, sometimes I see like the Bears on third down and he's not in or something like that, and it just kind of frustrates me. But yeah, this is just my overall thoughts, and I'll toss it over to Joe for who he thinks we should sell or buy for.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the Khalil Herbert take. It's either you trade Herbert or you try to trade Valus. I mean, apparently there was someone who wanted Valus. We learned that during uh Hard Knocks, but I don't know if there's still a market for that. I don't know if there's a market for the Dom Rob or um there's probably no market for Blessing Game because no one likes fullbacks anymore. But I don't know if anyone wants Dom Rob, but he's been out. They kept him. And he has not played any of the games this year. He's not been active, so I don't know why we kept him. Um, but yeah, defensive tackle definitely trade piece to look for. Uh, I would love to say offensive line, but no one trades offensive linemen that are actually going to start. So like, why would you trade for a backup when you have decent backups already? That's so I don't think that's going to happen. Uh, yeah, look for a defensive tackle. Uh, I don't if there's a I don't know if there's a good defensive tackle on a bad team right now. I haven't looked too far into it, but I would I- I'd highly I don't know if I would say highly doubt it, but I don't think it's very likely because the teams that I can think of that are bad are the Jaguars because they don't really have a defense. Uh, the Panthers, who we just faced, who don't have anybody on the defensive line, and then I mean the Bengals, who don't have any. I don't think they have a defense tackles that we would want, and I don't think they would be selling either because I think they want to still try to make the playoffs, even though they're 1-4. Um, yeah, I just don't think there's good defensive tackles available, but like starting defensive tackles available. But if you get somebody that's a little bit better than Chris Williams to rotate in, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure who brought it up and who wrote this article, but they mentioned that Cleveland might be a team looking to sell at the trade deadline just because oh my lord, excuse me, the Deshaun Watson experiment just has not gone according to plan. Um, Obviously, we wouldn't be in the market for Amari Cooper, but that's been a hot name from Cleveland that they might be looking to sell. But the interesting one for us that might kind of bode well is some people have mentioned that Wyatt Teller might be available. He is on injury reserve right now. But by the time the trade deadline would come around, he might be ready that next week. So I think hypothetically, if we were to trade for him, it'd be like probably obtain him, sit him for a week, and then he'd be ready by week 10 or 11. So that's right there in that mixture. I think week 11 actually is the first of our divisional games. I think we played Green Bay in week 11. So obviously getting ahead of ourselves, we're not saying it's 100%, but Wyatt Teller might be a name for the Bears to look around if they are willing to sell. I don't know if he's a name that Cleveland has been thinking about uh, getting rid of, but when he's healthy, he's been one of the best guards in the league. And right there, if you're to get him healthy for, I think the article might have said like a third round pick, and we would obtain Wyatt Teller for a third round pick, and we would get Teller and a late round pick. So I personally would be willing to give up a third if you can get a starting guard in free agency. Obviously, he's injured, so we'd have to do medicals and everything like that beforehand. But um, what do you guys think of that potentially, Wyatt Teller being available? Joe, I'll start with you. Do you think he would be available, and do you think it'd be a good idea? And what would you be willing to give up?
I mean, uh, I don't know. Like, the Browns suck, and the Deshaun Watson experiment has not worked. But like, I just don't know if you're willing to trade an off of your offensive line because even if like say they move off of Watson after this year and you bring in another quarterback, draft another quarterback or whatever, you're gonna get rid of pieces of your offensive line. That's gonna hurt whoever you bring in. I don't know why you would do that, especially when you've had one of the better offensive lines in the league the past like 5 years. But if they are willing to sell Wyatt Teller, you trade him. Yes, give us Wyatt Teller. He's better than any interior uh lineman we have right now, I'll take it. Although I'm not sure what side of the line he plays. Like I know who he is, I just don't know
He's a
what side of the
right
line he
guard.
plays. He's a right guard. Okay,
Mhm.
so yes, definitely. If he's available and you get him for a third, get him for a third because that would solve our right guard problems right now. And maybe you could send Nate Davis back to them if they want right third. I know that'd be funny because like that just adds to how bad the Browns are. But and I don't think they would take Nate Davis. But if they want Nate Davis, give him the Davis. Um, but yeah, I think White Teller would be a great addition if that's a possibility.
Yeah, there's probably no shot that any team would want to take Nate Davis, especially with this contract. But I would definitely take Wyatt Teller because I'm looking at his age. He's 29, which is a little on the older side, but offensive linemen they tend to be able to play longer. And I know there's good examples around the league, like even the Browns left guard. I forgot how to, it's like Joel Bettino. I forgot how to say his name.
Antonio, I think.
Antonio. Yeah, he's
Antonio.
really good. And he's like, oh, I think he's around like mid 30s. The Lions signed Kevin Zeitler from the Ravens. He's really good right guard and he's on the older side. But if we were able to get Wyatt Teller for a third, hopefully, I mean, maybe a fourth if we're lucky, I would definitely take him for sure.
Yeah, I think it all just depends on where the Bears are at when the trade deadline comes around. Because hypothetically, maybe I can just look at the schedule here.
I
And
can
I'm
tell
getting
you
ahead of
their
us.
next opponents off the top
Yeah,
of
go
my head.
ahead.
They have Jacksonville, by Washington, and then Arizona,
Okay, so
and then New England.
but see, you get so homerish when you think about the schedule, looking at it, but that is a winnable stretch of games for Chicago. So potentially being at that 6-3, 7-2 mark, if right guard is still an issue for this squad and he becomes available, I think that's just a surefire move right away to get yourself into position into the tougher part of your schedule. And again, we don't need to get ahead of ourselves, but if that's a move that happens and the Bears are in a position to improve and potentially get themselves into a playoff spot, I think that's a no-brainer personally. But we've kind of talked about everything relating to the trade deadline, relating to this Carolina Panthers matchup. Before we head out, do you guys have anything else to mention about just the Bears in general or this matchup? Big win against the Panthers.
Just keep building. Let's keep building this. Uh, don't stop after one win. Obviously, we'll talk about it more on one Thursday. But this next game is definitely a winnable game. Uh, they're the Jaguars are pretty bad. They're not as bad as the Panthers, but doesn't mean they're good this year. So winnable game. Uh, take this one, and then go into your bye and ready yourself for the Commanders, who are good. I'm still waiting for their downfall because I don't like Cliff Kingsbury, and I think he's gonna mess Jaden Daniels up at some point. But not, I mean, I don't want to wish bad things on Jaden Daniels, but I just think like Cliff Kingsbury is not uh, he wasn't a good head coach, but like he also called offensive plays. So like offensive coordinator too. Like I think it's gonna fall off at some point. That's just what I think. But other than that, all I have to say is please leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever, review wherever you listen to this. It really helps. But that's it.
Absolutely. Help us grow as the Bears grow. A winnable stretch of games coming up as we send it to the next episode. A matchup previewing a matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars across the pond, as they like to say. A winnable stretch of games coming up for Chicago as we celebrate this Victory Monday and close out this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. We will see you next as we preview the matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. We'll see you next time.